Let's observe a pedigree involving the supernatural characters. The trait that this pedigree is based on is the inheritance of light eyes. Each shaded circle or box means that the individual is affected by the trait and shows the phenotype of light eyes. If a particular shape is not shaded, they are not affected by the trait and therefore they have dark eyes. Our goal is to figure out which methods of inheritance are consistent with the inheritance pattern of the shaded trait. The first method of inheritance we will look at is X-linked dominant. In this case, the shaded shapes must have a dominant allele present on the X chromosome. If the shape is not shaded, there must not be a dominant allele present. Notice that 4-1, which is Emma, is not shaded. This means that she must only have recessive alleles, one from her mother and one from her father Dean. However, Dean's X chromosome has a dominant allele since his shape is shaded. It's not possible for Emma to get a second recessive allele because her father did not have one to give her. Therefore, an X-linked dominant mode of inheritance is not consistent with his pedigree. Here we have Lydia, Dean, and Emma. The blue flowers represent X chromosomes with a dominant allele, and the brown flowers represent X chromosomes with a recessive allele. Both Dean and Lydia have light eyes. However, Emma has brown eyes. In order for Emma to have brown eyes, she must be getting an X chromosome with a recessive allele from her mother and an X chromosome with a recessive allele from her father. However, Dean only has an X chromosome with a dominant allele. Therefore, this is not possible. Now we will observe the X-linked recessive. In this case, all shaded shapes must only have recessive alleles on their X chromosome. Unshaded shapes must have a dominant allele on the X chromosome. This mode of inheritance is inconsistent with the pedigree because it's not possible for Mary to have inherited an X chromosome with a recessive allele from her father since he is not affected by the trait. Here we have Samuel, Deanna, and Mary. In this case, the blue flowers represent an X chromosome with a recessive allele. Because Mary has blue eyes, she must be getting an X chromosome with a recessive allele from her mother and one from her father. However, Samuel has none to give her. Therefore, this is not possible. Looking at Y-linked, remember that all males in the pedigree must be affected by the trait. However, when we look at Samuel's shape, we'll notice that he is not shaded, so he is not affected by the trait. Therefore, this is not an option. In case of autosomal recessive, the sex of the individual does not matter. The shaded shapes must have two recessive alleles. The unshaded regions must have at least one dominant allele. If we look at Emma, we'll notice that she is unshaded. This means that she would have required a dominant allele from one of her parents. However, both of her parents are homozygous recessive alleles, so there is no dominant allele present in either of her parents to be passed down to her. At this point, the flowers will no longer represent X chromosomes. Now they only represent alleles. If an individual has two blue flowers, that means that they have light eyes. And Emma's parents are only able to donate blue flowers. This would mean that Emma would have light eyes. However, as indicated in the pedigree, Emma is supposed to have brown eyes, so this is not possible. In case of autosomal dominant, all the unshaded shapes must have two recessive alleles and the shaded shapes must have at least one dominant allele. We can see that this is the only method of inheritance that is consistent with our pedigree.